Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. Now first let's talk about Kharkiv direction. The Ukrainians continue bombing and attacking the territory of Russian Federation. For example, some Ukrainian sources published the video of results of HIMARS strike. The Ukrainians are saying that as a result of another attack they managed to destroy the Russian warehouse. We continue receiving very interesting details and updates about the battle between Liptsy and Gluboka. I'll remind you that for the previous, let's say 10 or maybe 15 days, the Ukrainians have been trying to attack the Russian forces to counterattack in this area with the purpose to restore control over the village by the name of Gluboka. The Ukrainians for those purposes were using the forces of 42nd and 13th Brigades, and as we discussed in the previous updates, the Ukrainians suffered significant losses. And today we start receiving additional updates about the situation with the 42nd Mechanized Brigade, more precisely about the situation with 3rd Battalion. The sources reported that 3rd Battalion of the 42nd Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces almost completely disappeared in the area of the settlement Gluboka. Attempts by relatives of the Ukrainian Armed Forces soldiers whom the brigade command sent to slaughter to reach out the commander did not lead to anything. The destroyed battalion of 42nd Mechanized Brigade was replaced by militants of the 30th Brigade of the National Guard. So this is the disaster of this personal disaster of this 42nd Brigade. The Russians are saying continue reporting about attempts to establish complete control over the village of Zeleny. They continue attacks according to them in the western direction, but for now without any geolocations and without any updates. Very interesting details are coming from Volchansk. There are very heavy clashes, as we discussed in the previous videos. The Ukrainian sources confirms that the Russians most likely control more than 60 or 70% of industrial zone Aggregatny Volchansk plant. And the minister on the official Telegram channel of the Group of Forces North stated that they continue offensive, that during the previous day the Russians managed to establish complete control over another building, and that the Russians are getting closer and closer to the final buildings and final locations of this industrial zone. On the other hand, the Russians reported that during the previous night the Ukrainians, who are currently, according to the Russians, blocked in the citadel, try to, let's say, break through the Cauldron, try to break through the encirclement, and for those purposes the Ukrainians were trying to attack in the south and southwestern direction, or something like this. The Ukrainians were trying to break through the Cauldron and to reach the river Volcha with the purpose to evacuate their soldiers. So let's move to the official statement of the Group of Forces North and to read what they were trying to talk. So the Russians are saying that from the citadel the Ukrainians made 3 attempts to counterattack with the purpose, the most important word, to break through the Cauldron in the citadel. The Ukrainians were using 3 waves of attacks with 90 soldiers in each one. So the Russians managed to repel all those attacks, and the Ukrainians suffered significant losses, up to 50 soldiers that they lost during those attempts. Also, the Russians reported that the 71st Jaeger Brigade was encircled in the citadel. We're not talking about the entire brigade, that's a lot of thousands, let's 2,000-3,000 of people, maybe less due to the losses during the previous period of time, but most likely 200 or maybe even more soldiers were encircled and currently appeared in the citadel Cauldron, and the reason of that is Russian progress in the Aggregatny plant. So as you can see, the Russians basically cut the main supply roads that Ukrainians were using for supporting their forces of 671st Brigade there, and now this brigade completely cut off from the mainland. And this is the reason why they're trying to counterattack this way. The Ukrainians during the previous days were trying to counterattack or move this way, but all those attempts were, let's say, blocked by the Russian FPV drones, Russian aviation. So today they tried to counterattack this way, and those attacks were also repelled. Very interesting development of the situation. We continue receiving a lot of very interesting videos from the borderlands. In this video we can see the continuous attempt from the Russian side to redeploy a significant number of engineering equipment with the purpose to build hundreds of defense belts, fortifications, trenches along the border and the territory of Ukraine. The Ukrainians now need to do a lot of job. As you can see, we have significant number of series of videos of how the Ukrainians were FPV droning the Russian engineering machines. So the Russians do have some plans. I'm not sure whether the Russians are planning to continue moving further to the south, but obviously they're planning to dig in deeper on the territories they have already managed to capture. So very interesting. Now let's move to Oskol small river, Seversky Donetsk River more precisely. Today the Russian sources published another video how they destroyed the dam once again. If you remember, we talked just yesterday that according to the group of forces north, the Russians destroyed the dam for the third time in a row and promised to provide us additional updates, and now we see the results of those strikes. So this is exactly the video how the Russians were bombing and attacking the dam that Ukrainians are using as a main supply road between Kharkiv and Volchansk. Now we are moving further. We have additional updates from Sever's direction, and the most important is that pro-Ukrainian mappers Deep State confirmed that the Russians established significant control over the fields and the territories to the east of Razdolovka. So this territory, this white cloud, according to Deep State, is under complete Russian control, and this territory without even a color is the territory that is in the gray zone. So as you can see, the progress is significant. The Russians are storming Razdolovka itself. We got additional updates of additional progress, and most likely 2, 3, 4 days and the Russians will capture this territory completely, and they will continue moving further in direction of Perezhny. And basically Perezhny, as you can see according to the map, is just one big city village that goes from the south to let's say Sever. So it's like entering Perezhny means entering the first outskirts of Seversk itself. We haven't received anything about additional progress of the Russians in the eastern of Sever's direction. Chasiv Yar, nothing special during the previous 24 hours, just one important, interesting video. The video was published by the Russian sources, by the Russian forces who was attacking the Ukrainians from T-90 tank. And the author of this video claims that at moment the tank was damaged by javelin, but as you can see, the tank wasn't damaged, just a few, let's say, fire elements entered the towel, and after that everything was finished. And of course the author says that after that the Russians retreated from the territory. Now we are moving to Avdiivka direction, where we continue receiving significant number of updates. We have received the final geolocation confirming that most of Novoalexandrovka is already under complete Russian control. The video was published by the Ukrainian sources on this video. In this video we can see the Ukrainian FPV drone or drone flying above the village and making reconnaissance operation of possible Russian positions, trying to find where exactly the Russians are located, trying to find their warehouses, ammo depots, their machine gun positions, the concentration of forces. But as you can see from the first point of view, we see that the village is empty. But the village is not empty. The Russians were hiding between the buildings and inside of the basements. But at some points of the video, at some minutes, we can find the movement and how the one Russian soldiers were running from one building to another. Probably he was moving from one point, let's say, to some command center or to any other position, and the Ukrainians start following, trying to discover where exactly this soldier is going to, let's say, hide for the next period of time. This video was geolocated, and if we return back on map, we can make a, let's say, short, analysis. The Russian soldier was moving something like this, and then he tried to hide in this building. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map, and we have confirmed that this part of Novoalexandrovka is under complete Russian control. We still haven't received any confirmations about the most western part of the village. We still haven't received confirmation about Russian control over these 3 lines and over these 3 lines as well. So we are waiting for this information. As soon as we got some, we will update the map as well. Now we're moving to Sokol, Novosilovka Persha direction. About Sokol, the Russians continue offensive. Most likely the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will report about complete control over the village today or maybe tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are trying to evacuate as many armored vehicles and equipment as possible. They're trying to move howitzers, armored vehicles, Max Pros, tanks, personnel, soldiers, everything they can, but the Russians control the roads, the main road to supply, and the Russians are bombing this territory significantly, let's say causing significant damage to the Ukrainians. For example, in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate something. Yes, Max Pro, probably some armored vehicle, was trying to evacuate from the line of combat contact, but was destroyed as a result of FPV drones. So to summarize everything, the Ukrainians are focused in evacuation of everything they can evacuate. According to pro-Ukrainian deep state, the Russians managed to improve their positions further in the south, let's say western direction of Novopokrovsk, getting as close as possible to the village by the name of Novoselovka-Persha. 1-2 days and the main battle for this territory is going to start. And the same situation in this direction. The Ukrainians are trying to evacuate as many as possible vehicles, armored vehicles, from this direction because they understand that they have already lost this territory. We have reports from Nivolska. According to information we have, according to not so reliable Russian sources, during the previous night, Nivolska was captured completely by the Russians. If we receive additional updates, of course, we will adjust the map and we adjust the colors of the territory. We have report very interesting from Krasnogorovka itself, also not from 100% reliable source, but more or less reliable, we can say like this. And according to information we have, the Russians during the previous night or days established complete control over this territory as well. So as you can see, the Russians are trying to close the Cauldron to create another citadel Cauldron, the first one we discussed of the 71st Jaeger Brigade in Volchansk. Now the Russians are trying to create a Cauldron for the Ukrainians in Krasnogorovka. They're working very slowly, step by step, and they're moving from two directions, from the southern and from the eastern, and the main Russian area where they're planning to cross to meet each other of two forces is the northwestern part of the village, so here. We continue receiving reports from Georgievka, probably third or fourth day in a row. The Russian sources, without any geolocations, without any videos, are saying that the Russians established complete control over the village. So for now, we're keeping this area as is, but most likely we're going to receive something in the very near future. So this is about the situation on the ground. We also have lots of reports about massive missile strikes that took place during the previous night and during the previous morning. For example, we got continue receiving reports about destroyed significant number of ammo depots and let's say fuel depots all over the entire territory of Ukraine. In this video we can see the explosions and the fire anomalies and another fuel depot. Furthermore, we have some roads map of missile roads and drone roads, and once again the Russians using new type of missiles. As you remember, we discussed that the Russians improved their Ha-101 missile, and this missile now attacked the territory of Ukraine with a cluster part. And as you can see, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in the western part of Ukraine, mainly in the airfield by Starokonstantinov airfield, where the Ukrainians, according to information we have already concentrated the Su-24 or planning to concentrate the F-16's airplanes. And using cluster rounds, of course, the Russians have significant chances to destroy every single aircraft in this area. According to information we have, the first 5,000 prisoners have applied to join the armed forces of Ukraine according to new mobilization law. So new stormtroopers are about to enter the line of combat contact. During the previous night, according to information we have, the Ukrainians tried to attack Rostov-on-Don area, the area where the Russians have the general staff. That was the biggest attack ever, according to the Russians. More than 70 drones were involved in that attack. The Russians managed to destroy every single one. The Ukrainians haven't managed to deal even a single damage. But we need more details. For now, Ukrainians still haven't provided any updates. Maybe they managed to destroy something. For now, we don't have anything about this. Now we are moving to Italy. According to information we have, the previous night there was a meeting, G7 meeting, where we can find the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak. We have also President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Of course, we have Joe Biden. We have the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz. We have the Prime Minister of Japan, Kishida. And of course, we have the Prime Minister of Italy, Republic of Italy, Meloni, and of course, Emmanuel Macron, the President of France. And everybody was talking, of course, about Russia, about the most important Russian assets, how to use this money and how to help Ukraine to survive under the very heavy Russian pressure. We have lots of pictures, we have already lots of memes that shows that most of the leaders, every single leader of G7 is already lost elections and lost their political positions due to the conflict with Russia. We have the videos of meetings with Robocop in this central of the scenes. means we have lots of things, but the most important is that lots of countries of G7 signed additional defense agreement with Ukraine. For example, according to information we have, Italy and Ukraine signed a defense agreement for a period of 10 years. Also, we have Japan signed additional agreement with Zelensky for additional 10 years and let's say allocation of 4.5 billions of military aid. And the most important, we have the signing of agreement between Ukraine, Zelensky and Robocop. Robocop promised to, let's say, support Ukraine for another 10 years with significant number of weapons. Zelensky also reported that according to military security agreement with United States of America, United States will supply Ukraine with Patriot squadrons of fighters, including F-16s, but not only. And of course, Ursula von der Leyen also reported that the G7 has agreed to provide Ukraine with loans worth around 50 billion by the end of the year, and they are planning to use the windfall profits from Russia's sovereign assets to repay them. And you know that another important thing I found out after the G7, that currently, as you know, Russia is no longer, for example, the main enemy for the Western countries, is no longer the main enemy for Scholz, for Biden, for Ursula, for Sunak, for Trudeau, for Macron, Meloni, and for Zelensky. Russia is no longer, and Putin is no longer enemy of them. As I understand, now the main enemy of all these peoples are the friends of Putin. You know that? It's very interesting that now the friends of Putin are the main enemy, because Putin can't take power of, let's say, von der Leyen. Putin can't become president of the United States of America. Putin can't win elections in the, let's say, in the Germany Bundestag. Putin can't become president of France. But friends of Putin can't become every single position that I have just mentioned. So now, as I understand, European countries and the Western politicals are going to pay a significant attention to fight with the friends of Putin, which, as I understand, much dangerous than Zelensky and much dangerous than the special military operation in Ukraine. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.